Welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd, and we're looking forward to another great show tonight. Our number is 1-800-676-5446 if you have questions for our phone volunteers. If your question can wait or you've got some great pictures you'd like to share, please send us an email to byf@unl.edu. Tell us where you live, give us as much information as you can. Remember, those go on a show that follows, not the show tonight. Don't forget to keep up with Backyard Farmer during the week on our Facebook page. Check out that YouTube channel for past shows and features after the show. So Kyle, you have a beastie that we've been getting a lot of questions about. What is that?
Yeah, tonight my guest is the Eastern cicada killer. This is a female here. And you know, especially over the last few years, since the news of the introduction of the Asian giant hornet, or sometimes called murder hornet, in Washington, a lot of people are concerned that this might be the so-called murder hornet, but unless you're a cicada, it is not. So this is one of our natives. It's one of the largest wasps we have in Nebraska, and they're pretty distinctive. They have this dark black abdomen with three broken yellow bands across that abdomen. So they are solitary wasps. The females are really quite gentle, actually. They're not really concerned with people, and not a threat. And they have this really cool biology. They burrow into the soil where they're digging these tunnels, and then they have these different cells where they will sting a cicada, paralyze it, and then drag it into this burrow, provision those cells with somewhere between 1 to 4 different cicadas, depending on the size, lay a single egg in that cell, and then seal it up, and then the larvae consume the cicadas, those paralyzed living cicadas in that cell. So, they're really fascinating wasp. Imagine, stinging something your size and carrying it around. It's pretty impressive the way they do that with, maybe 60 different cicadas. So, overall, they're fairly beneficial as something that helps, kind of control populations of cicadas.
All right, but they are scary to people.
They're scary, but they're, they're pretty harmless.
Excellent. All right, Rock, a weed.
Yes, Honeyvine milkweed, and it is a member of the milkweed family, but it's not the most preferred source for monarchs, so it's one that can be really invasive in the garden, and aromatic. Right now, we're all smelling it, but it could just pretty much take over a garden. And last week I misspoke, and I said that like burr cucumber, you could snip it off at the base, but you actually break dormancy in some auxiliary buds, so where you had 1, you'll have 3 to 5, and then if you continue to pull and aggressively get them off. Unfortunately, they usually grow in the landscape, so we actually suggest pre-emergent control with preen. Does a pretty good job. It's going to take multiple applications in the spring, and right now all you can do is try to pull them off so that they don't smother your plants. But because you're not going to be spraying any kind of phenoxy or broadleaf herbicide in and amongst your landscape plants. But it's an interesting plant, and some people say, well, it's a milkweed, we should keep it alive for the pollinators, especially the monarchs, and it really isn't a preferred feeder of the larva. And my colleague down at the end, John, will talk about it more.
All right, and it is the kudzu of the north in our backyard farmer garden.
Well, it's taken over, raspberries, I think it is, right? Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
All right, Kyle, what did you bring? Other Kyle.
Other Kyle.
It's going to be confusing.
It's the, I guess bug Kyle and rot Kyle.
Rot Kyle, rotten Kyle.
We'll go rot Kyle, I like that. So I have some scab. And so this is apple scab. It's on one of my pear trees. So apple scab it's a fungal pathogen. Often starts off as just these grayish, light colored lesions. You'll typically only see on the bottom of the leaf. Let's see if we flip it over, we shouldn't really see those lesions. But as it progresses, it turns the leaves a nice yellow color. And then those lesions do become much more noticeable on there as well. But the rest of the leaf, the rest of it that's still yellow, is really not infected with the fungus. But one thing about this disease is it's really only a problem in commercial settings. And so it may lead to some early defoliation, but it's generally not going to harm the overall health of the plant. In fact, you can eat the fruit. You can eat scabby fruit, which works great for cider as well. If you're going to sell it at the farmer's market, probably an issue there. But if you just have an apricot or an apple tree in your backyard and you're seeing some of this, really nothing to worry about. If you are thinking about some sort of control options, those cultural controls, so raking up the leaves, trying to prune out any branches to increase airflow, are really going to be your best bet. Fungicides can be an option. Generally not recommended for most home landscape uses, because you'll have to do a fungicide application kind of right when those leaves are beginning to bud out, and the fungicides keep going until you're done harvesting the tree for the fall. So really, just one of those things. Enjoy seeing some nice yellow leaves on your otherwise green apple tree.
Thanks, Kyle. All right, John, you get to weigh in on milkweed.
Right, so Rock had the Honeyvine milkweed. Like he said, not a great forage for those monarchs, and it is invasive. We've been seeing a lot of interest in the last week or so when we had the listing of the monarch on an endangered species list, and a lot of people are interested about milkweed. And so this is common milkweed. It's actually like a weed that comes up. You'll see it pop up everywhere. You can leave it in place. You can even plant this. It's not the prettiest of plants. I think it sort of is tall and gangly, and the flowers are kind of this ugly, dusty pink color that aren't really, they're kind of interesting when they set the seed pods. There's also the butterfly milkweed, which I looked around campus and couldn't find any. And also I have some at home, but only like new plants, and I'm not going to harvest my entire plant to bring in here for this show. But the point I want to make is milkweed is important. It's the larval food for the caterpillars, but it is not the only food source that you need. The adults actually need flowers of all different kinds. So they will gather from the honey or from the milkweed plants themselves, the flowers, but they need a variety of different plants blooming throughout the summer and fall. And so those can be natives like coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, things like that. But actually, we also see that things like zinnia and lantana and plants like that we sort of introduce into the garden are also important food sources for those. So you need a balance of those blooming flowers for the adults and the milkweed for the larvae.
Excellent. Thank you, John. All right, Kyle, Bug Kyle, you get the first picture. And we had several people send this in. It is, what is this beauty on the parsley plants, and what will it become?
Sure, this will become a black swallowtail. So yeah, they feed on members of the carrot family, including parsley.
Mm-hmm. Lovely, lovely. And your next one comes to us from Wayne. This is our 6-year-old viewer, and found this one crawling on the house. Wonders, is this a good guy or a bad guy?
A good guy, I would say. It's another swallowtail. So this is the caterpillar for the eastern tiger swallowtail. They're normally green, kind of a bright green, but as they mature and get ready to pupate, build a chrysalis, then they turn this darker color. So it's probably wandering off to do that.
All right, awesome. And one more, and this one is says all black, looks like a wasp. This is from Hastings. What is this? Good guy or bad guy?
Good guy. Yeah, it's definitely a wasp. You can't really see any detail in the picture. Probably a sphesid, thread-waisted wasp. They're generally solitary wasps that they paralyze other arthropods, spiders, crickets, a variety of different things, and then provision their nests with those other things. So like common example would be mud daubers.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Kyle. Okay, Rock, your first one here, she sent 2 pictures. This is an Omaha viewer. She's concerned about this vine growing on the fence on the neighbor's property. She says it's coming across, coming under. She wants to control it. What is it, and what do we tell her about this? So
this is heartleaf pepper vine. It's a perennial, very aggressive, and obviously it's in a neighbor's yard and encroaching into theirs, and they can control it up to the fence line by pruning back, but it's just going to keep on coming over the side. If anything were to root and sprout in their yard, they could certainly spray it, and usually the cut stem approach with a glyphosate type product or a triclopyr type product seems to work the best. But just be a good neighbor, and don't cut it up to your fence line and then put something on the cut stem, because certainly that's going to go back at least a foot or two and probably irritate your neighbor.
All right, including the vine. The vine will be irritated.
And the vine will be irritated, of course.
All right, your next two pictures come to us also from Omaha. This just appeared in the parking. What is it? Is it good for anything? Certainly healthy in a rather dry area.
Yeah, this is Burke cucumber, which is also a vine. It's an annual, unlike the previous example, and so it's relatively easy to control with pre-emergence in the spring. And broadleaf herbicides now, but you really, once again, it's in the landscape and you really don't want to be spraying those. So I would just cut them back. And this is the one, unlike Honeyvine milkweed, that if you just snip it at the base, it pretty much runs out of gas.
All right, thanks, Rock. All right, Rock Kyle.
I like it.
This is one that probably belongs to Bug Kyle, but this was really funky. This comes to us from Hebron. He says these are a hard, almost nut-like growth. They found it in the soil of an unkempt lawn. What are these, and then what's inside? So you got it because it kind of looked shroomy and.
Yeah, and so I guess to answer the question, what is it? None of us know exactly. It really does not look to be fungal, especially in that second picture. When you cut it open, you can see that there's some green there. Fungi, by definition, don't have chlorophyll, so they won't produce anything green. There also looked like there was some insects that were in there, but you know, one thing that we will find in the soil on occasion are stinkhorn eggs, and so stinkhorn eggs will look very similar to snake eggs, but just kind of round, ovular, but smooth as well, and they can be anywhere from 6 inches to a couple of feet down in the soil. They don't really look like this, but yeah, we're not sure. We had wondered maybe it was a Jerusalem sunflower.
Kind of looked like a Jerusalem artichoke root, but it looks more. It's like an alien, I think. We'll say it's that.
Yeah,
like a cocoon, right?
There you go.
We're ready for Wilfred Brimley to come out of the cocoon, right?
All right, Kyle, you have one more. This viewer wants to know, what are these and are they poisonous?
They are not poisonous. You probably don't want to eat them, but those are the start of dead man's fingers, or so some type of Xylaria mushrooms. And I guess that's kind of strange to say that dead man's fingers aren't poisonous, but you don't want to eat them anyway, right?
Right.
But very common on a lot of hardwoods. You typically see them off growing out of stumps, things like that.
All right, thanks, Kyle. John, you have 3 pictures from this viewer on this one. This is Omaha. This appeared amongst the beets. They wondered if it was something that came in with the beet seeds, and you know, there we go. And then it has this long, sort of semi-beet-like root on it. What do we think this is?
So this probably did come in the packet of beet seeds, because that is Swiss chard. And Swiss chard and beets, even though they look very similar but very different at the same time, they're the same species. So it probably got mixed in somewhere at the seed company or something like that. So instead of harvesting it for the roots, you harvest it for the stems and the leaves.
All right, thanks, John. And you have one picture on this next one. This is a Norfolk viewer. She planted what she thought was a butternut squash, but this is what she got. What is it, and when does she harvest and eat?
So this is not a butternut squash. This is a type of zucchini, and you harvest it before it gets to this big. Once zucchini get over maybe like a foot or so, they're not the best eating. You can make zucchini bread out of them. So I would harvest it at a much smaller level.
All right, thanks, John. Well, a lot of our schools have good intentions when they start a garden. Some prosper and are a great learning tool for the students, and others wither and die. Tonight we're going to see a wonderful garden project at Hastings that went from just a few rows a few years ago to a place the community can be proud of.
10 years ago, Jason Stoddard walked into my office and said, would it be possible for us to plant a garden on the middle school grounds? I had been through this before. I had seen things grown on school property that didn't last very long. This is a fantastic garden. More so, it is a fantastic community center.
There was a need for kids to be outside. So 10 years ago, we received permission from the school board and superintendent to have our own little dig in here. And we started with some raised beds and some row crops. And like I said, this is our 10th season. And since then, we've grown a lot. We've just installed a new growing spaces dome so the kids can have access to that all year round. And we've built a pretty solid gardening community here in Hastings. Students started plants inside the classroom, a variety of flowers and vegetables. So we've got 40 different varieties of tomatoes, probably 20, 30 varieties of pepper. We've got corn, beans, anything you can imagine. Very, very large variety of flowers. A large focus of what we do is build bouquets with students and the community on Monday nights. Lots of different types of brassicas that compose a lot of our meal food. We've always tried to have just a gigantic variety of food. So a lot of the peppers and everything else that we find here, or that we grow here, you're not going to be finding in the stores.
So one of my favorite things about this garden is just interacting with lots of different people who share my same hobby. It's amazing to see everybody working together to produce this big thing for the community. And I've learned a lot about gardening. I've actually got encouraged to start my own garden at home.
Yeah, I used to be a student here, and one of the things that I just remember most about this place was the community. It was always about the community that came out, the community that came to support this place. And just the way that it has grown since then has just been unbelievable. And I remember some of the little things that we would do, rather it just be planting seeds in our 7th grade classroom starting in January to get ready for the next growing season. It's just been an awesome community that I hope we're always part of and continues to grow.
When I look out at the garden in the dome, I see students that's really the one connection they have. Like, sports aren't their thing, other things aren't their thing, but they feel the team out here, Mr. Stoddard and the team, really get them involved in a way that uses their talents. One student using technology, just timing the cameras, and then another student is just watering, but they all feel a purpose.
Our plan is to continue to motivate the community to come share these experiences with us and share food, and then continue to learn from each other.
I don't know if it's about growing plants, but it's certainly about growing intergenerational cooperation and just kids working with older people. I look in 5 to 10 years for this to continue to be a hotbed of innovation, whether it's gardening innovation, whether it's scientific innovation, whether it's just developing different kind of community. We just look for this place to continue to innovate, but most importantly, to continue to be a center of community.
We really appreciate all those people at the Hastings Middle School for letting us come out and feature their wonderful community garden. And we're going to keep an eye on that over the years. Maybe we'll make another visit and see whether it still survives. I'll bet it does. All right, Kyle, Hupper, Nebraska, saw this colorful insect on that coneflower, and you can just see it on the edge of the cone there. What is that?
Yeah, striped sweat bee. So this is one of the native pollinators, so good guy to have around.
Excellent. You have another ID. This is Concord. Several of these are frequenting her wildflower garden, especially around the yarrow. Good guy or bad guy?
Yeah, good guy, I'd say. It's a red-spotted rove beetle. Mm-hmm. So rove beetles, interesting. It's the largest family of animals. There's over 50,000 species, but these in particular, this species, they're associated with like decaying fleshy fungi, and sometimes carrion or dung, so decomposers.
Okay, cool. And then one more. This is from Eagle. Also, what is this?
This one is a northern mole cricket. So they're overall they're really not a problem. In the south, there are some species that can be turf pests and cause some damage. But species here, they're not really too problematic. But they do like kind of sandy burrowing and sandy wet soils where they will feed on roots of different plants, including turf.
I see the turf guy nodding his head when you said they're a problem in the south.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
All right. So, Rock, your first one comes to us from Prosser, Nebraska. She says, short of dynamite, how do you get rid of the sandburr? She's tried pulling, but apparently didn't get the root. Is there something you can use after you pull it out?
And she referred to it as Texas sandburr, which is what we call puncture vine or goat head, right? It's a broadleaf weed, summer annual, very aggressive, and very painful if walked upon with bare feet, and it can stick to clothing and all the other stuff that goes along with it. And it really is more effectively controlled pre-emergent in the spring of the year. If it's in the lawn, and this isn't a lawn obviously, but if it's in the lawn, you can use any of the common pre-emergent herbicides will work. And if it's in the garden, preen does a pretty good job. Once again, with preen, it's got a very short residual, so you have to put down multiple applications. Pulling is difficult because once it gets a burr on it, it's painful. And so not recommended. And it can be, when it's young, you can just tow it off because it doesn't have a real aggressive root system. So there's some non-chemical options as well.
All right, thanks, Rock. Your next one, you have two pictures. Found what he thinks is a weed. Digging it out, appears there are many underground roots. What do we think this is?
This is kochia, which is an annual that can grow fairly tall, up to 4 or 5 feet in a single growing season, and it is a weed. And it's simple to control. Just tow it back. All
right, and one more. This comes to us from Llewellyn. What type of weed is this? It has taken over her yard.
Yeah, it's spotted or prostrate spurge. They're the same species. They either have spots on them, or in this case, they don't. But it's has a milky sap in it. But beyond that, once again, pre-emergent or a broadleaf herbicide in the lawn and not in the garden.
All right, thank you, Rock. Okay, Kyle. Wilting cucumber plants. You get it because we've had this that's either that Kyle or this Kyle. So she did powder this with 7 after seeing the green and yellow stripe bug on it, but they're in full sun on a section of, so is this yours or yes?
Possibly. I mean, it's really, really difficult just seeing the wilted cucumbers. With seeing the spotted bug on there is probably a spotted cucumber beetle, and spotted cucumber beetles they are the vector for bacterial wilt of cucumbers, and so it's an Erwinia disease. But one way to check to see if you do have bacterial wilt, what you can do is you can cut one of those wilted vines right near the base, and then try to put that cut back. And as you slowly pull the two pieces apart, you should see some sticky bacteria just kind of oozing between the two parts. And that is actually diagnostic for bacterial wilt. If you're not seeing that sticky bacterial ooze, it's probably something else going on.
All right, thank you. 2 pictures on this next one. They're wondering what is wrong with these Blue Lake bush green beans. She's used 7 copper fungicide, gardens out in the open. This is Albion, and they have not seen any insects. They did use a crabgrass preventer on the lawn, but they waited for 3 cuttings before they used the clippings.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things going on. This last picture here looks very similar. This picture here looks like one of the bacterial diseases that beans get. There's about 3 of them, but I think that this is most likely brown spot. So again, you can put all the fungicide in the world on it. Fungicides do not control bacterial diseases. The other picture, though, where we had kind of the leaves that are kind of mottled with a little bit of a mosaic, I think that maybe there's some common bean mosaic virus going on there as well. Again, not a whole lot of good controls for that aside from removing the plants. Nice thing is that this virus will not make the fruit, will not make the harvest inedible. It just won't produce as much.
Thank you, Kyle. And 2 more on this next one too. This is what are the brown patches in the yard that continue to spread? Does not think it's sod webworm.
No, this looks like summer patch to me, and so we have kind of the round or almost frog eye type symptoms. Summer patch can be a bear to control. Unfortunately, preventative fungicides are your best bet, and so you want to make sure that you're controlling your thatch, and then also doing some deep, infrequent watering to promote a deep root zone. But then really a fungicide for summer patch is best going to be applied in the spring when the soils are first reaching about 65 degrees. And then again, 4 to 5 weeks later, come back and hit it with an azoxystrobin fungicide. Something like Heritage works pretty well, but at this time of year, not a whole lot of control for it.
Kyle, this is where I would suggest say reseed.
Okay.
Or overseed with, most of the newer cultivars are resistant, and even though summer patch is resident in the soil, it's a patch organism, right? But it's still, we would suggest they overseed this fall, and most of the information on summer patch resistance, or tolerance, is readily available online.
All right, thanks, guys. All right, John, you have a Bishop Scoutweed, and the whole patch was variegated, and now it's gradually turning green. It's a huge patch. This is in Friend. Is there any way she can get this to return to variegation?
So the interesting thing about the variegated type plants is it's sort of like a genetic mutation of the green variety, and it's not stable, so you've gotten some of it going back to green. Really, the only way to not have more green is to remove all the green, and that's really all that you can do. So it really is just remove the green.
Okay. 3 pictures on this next one. This is also beans. This is Council Bluffs. She's used a copper fungicide for rust. They do have shade because burning has happened. You get this because these guys' buckets were full. So what do you think this is?
So just like Rot Kyle said that fungicide doesn't work on bacteria, fungicide also does not work on insects.
Right.
And I see Bug Kyle shaking his head because this is spider mite damage on the beans, from what it looks like to me. So I would take a look on the underside to see if you see little spider mites. You might see some webbing. You can knock them off with water sometimes. You could do like an insecticidal soap or neem oil as well, but you're not going to get control on those. And that amount, usually we don't say, you should worry about spider mite damage, but that was a lot of spider mite damage.
It was.
So I think you're to the point there where you're not going to get a good harvest. So you either need to control it, or you need to rip those out and start over.
All right.
And you still have time to plant beans and have a fall crop.
Exactly. Well, we've been looking at some fantastic All-America selections at our garden over the past few weeks. Tonight we're going to focus on some of the vegetables. Here's Terry out in the Backyard Farmer Garden to tell us more.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're taking a break from looking at our 2022 All-America selection winners. The rest are all going to be tomatoes, and we're waiting for them to get a little bit more ripe for you to be able to see them on the camera. But as we've walked around the garden, we've really noticed how well and how much full this garden is really starting to look. It's really coming into the prime. The vegetables are starting to come in that we are donating to the East Campus area food banks. So far, we've collected about 75 pounds of produce from our garden, and we're super excited to start seeing those tomatoes and peppers be ready to be picked for our donations. We're also making sure that we're picking all of those Japanese beetles out of our garden. Remember, pick them off as much as you can, throw them in that soapy water to get rid of them. That's the best way of control. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
And right now it is time for the lightning round. Are you ready, John?
Always.
All right. We have a viewer who has an old asparagus bed, and they want to know what the best time is to actually transplant asparagus.
In the fall after it goes dormant.
All right. We have a viewer who bought a basil in a 5-inch pot. She put it in a 10-inch pot. It's an inside basil, but it's droopy. What's the deal?
Could be transplant shock.
All right. This is a Clarinda, Iowa viewer who wonders whether purple coneflowers will revert to white in a mixed planting.
Possibly.
We have a Geneva viewer who has a 4-year-old hardy hibiscus. The leaves are slightly curled and the flowers are only the size of a silver dollar.
Sounds, I don't know, pass.
We have a viewer who wants to know, in a small garden, is it okay if she puts her kitchen scraps under grass clippings to compost them like that?
You could, though you could have little critters coming and eating them.
All right. An Aurora viewer wants to know whether potting soil from the planters can go into a hole left after removing the pond.
Yes.
Nice job. Okay, you are up next, Kyle. Are you ready?
Born ready.
We'll see. We have a viewer in central Nebraska who has a nice-sized walnut tree that is currently yellowing. Is that a sign of thousand cankers or what?
Probably not. Thousand cankers has not been confirmed in that really in Nebraska, so no.
All right. We have a David City viewer who thinks they have smut in their sweet corn. Will this spread to the rest of their sweet corn patch?
Probably not. It infects through the pollen, so now you can just have some nice Mexican truffle tacos.
All right. This is a Carney viewer who has a smoke tree and it looks wilty. She's wondering if verticillium wilt would be showing up now.
It certainly could be, so yeah.
All right. We have several viewers who want to know how they can get rid of slime mold once and for all.
Don't get rid of slime molds. Slime molds are a lot of fun. They're an intelligent fungus that can move, and so there's really nothing to do with slime molds. Again, you should love slime molds. They're so much fun.
And on that note, you just blew it.
You're on track for a new record.
I was going so well, but it's.
Oh, brother.
I mean, if she's going to launch into another question, I was going to ask you to talk about like the videos of like making the streets of Tokyo with slime mold.
They're fascinating.
All right. Are you ready, Rock?
I'm not sure after that, but go ahead.
This is a viewer who wants to control wild violets. He knows it's fall, but he wants something that won't hurt the deer. And could he put down a fertilizer at the same time?
Certainly can put down a fertilizer at the same time. Not sure why you would if you've got plenty of fertilizer in the lawn, but triclopyr is what you want to do with wild violet. And as long as the deer don't come up when it's still wet, and usually it dries on the leaf within an hour, just don't worry about it.
All right.
But triclopyr for wild violets.
Okay, this is kind of yours, but it's kind of yours. So what is the perfect time for grub control in fescue?
Depends on which, and I wouldn't be putting grub control down for fescue anyway. Its root system can pretty much handle any population.
All right, this is a Nebraska City viewer who wants to know whether they should still mow when it's really, really hot.
If you can avoid mowing because it's not growing, certainly that's a good idea because that's a stress on the turf.
All right, we have an Overton viewer who wants to overseed with something, a fescue blend, and when?
Wait till this fall or late August, early September.
All right. How do you control Japanese knotweed? This is an Omaha viewer.
There's a number of broadleaf herbicides that'll do it. Roundup combined with 2,4-D is smoke on Japanese knotweed, but you're going to have to be persistent and multiple applications.
All right, excellent. Okay, Kyle, are you ready?
Ready.
Several people have sent this one in again. Their flocks are completely devastated by some sort of a creature. What's the creature and what can they spray it with?
Japanese beetles. Carbaryl is an option.
All right, and we have others who have flocks that looks like it's mottled. Is that Japanese beetles or is that something different?
I would say so.
Okay. Bellevue, we have a viewer who is using water to get rid of aphids on whorled milkweed. The aphids come back. What do they do instead, and will it knock the monarch eggs off?
I don't know. I wouldn't think it would knock the monarch eggs off. Really, the aphids are fine. They're not going to hurt anything, so I'd just leave them alone.
All right. Is milky spore powder safe to control Japanese beetles in a flower bed?
Yes, though it isn't necessarily the most effective.
All right. Is there a systemic that would work on bagworms on trees in the spring?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
All right. Tiny, tiny ants. Is there a pet safe bait?
Yeah, so generally speaking, you want to avoid putting those in any place. The pets can get access to them, but the common bait that has borax is generally pretty safe for vertebrates.
Excellent. Nice job, all. Okay. John, plants of the week.
Okay, well, we have a few things that actually look very similar here this week. And some people might say, well, that looks like a black-eyed Susan. It's actually a false sunflower. We have these nice little guys here. I don't know if we can get a close-up of those. They're about 4 feet tall, full to part sun. Many new cultivars, some that have orange or red zones on the rays, which are these yellow things. Those are not petals, but I'm not going to get into a botany lesson right now. On the other side of my little arrangement here, we have Henry Eiler sweet coneflower. And you see those sort of refined they're quilled rays. They're sort of all rolled up there, really fun. And then we have a little foliage in here. This is from Tiger Eye Staghorn Sumac. So you can do that as cut foliage. It's nice sort of chartreusey green. And it will produce suckers in the fall, but not like the smooth sumac.
Excellent. Thank you, John. All right, Kyle, Bug Kyle. This is a Weston, Nebraska viewer, has 200 ponderosa pines. He says there's a boring insect. What do we do here?
Yeah, this is a difficult situation. So this looks like injury from one of the pine pitch moths. So there's a few different species in the same genus, Zimmerman pine moth or pinyon pine mass moth. The caterpillars, they bore in and cause this sort of injury. So treatment is in that large of a setting is going to be difficult. You can treat with like permethrin, something like that, but you really have to completely cover the trunk, and you have to do it a couple times a year because those overwintering caterpillars, they come out in April, so you need to treat then, and then when the adults are active and laying eggs in August would be another time to treat. Maybe not the most practical, so otherwise trying to just maintain healthy trees as well as you can. Both overwatering and underwatering really increases susceptibility to these moths. So if you try to get those trees, I don't know if they're irrigated at all, but probably not for something that large, but that's probably the best thing you can do.
All right, thanks, Kyle. This is a Papillion viewer who said they've had a few of these around the house. What are they? And he was eating a Japanese beetle.
Yeah, it's a wheel bug, and they're generalist predators, which isn't always a great thing because they also take out beneficials like honeybees, but they are great because they're one of the few predators that do feed on both Japanese beetles and brown marmorated stink bugs. A lot of predators won't take brown marmorated stink bugs, so they're good for that.
Excellent. Okay, this is a Hebron viewer who has a prickly pear cactus and has these worms inside, and he says they secrete a jello-like bright blue substance.
Yeah. These are very cool. Pyralid moths, they're prickly pear borers, and they'll feed. They prefer prickly pear, but they will also bore into other cacti as well. I don't know that there's really. I don't think they're probably very well studied, so there's no sort of control or anything. Maybe just removing any infested pads, probably the only thing you can do.
All right, and 2 pictures on this next one. This is a forsythia, dying shrubs only on one corner. She's seen broken branches after the lawnmower hits them, but then she's seen these gall things. Is that what this is?
Yeah, so definitely a gall. I'm not sure that this gall is insect related though. I was wondering about maybe like a crown or agrobacterium or something, so I don't know if Kyle, if you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, it doesn't, to me it looks like it easily could be agrobacterium gall. Typically we call it crown gall because it's the bacteria is in the soil, but anywhere there's wounding, that bacteria can splash up and cause more of that galling. Especially with kind of how rough it was, and there was a bunch of like kind of almost adventitious roots that were coming out of it. Crown gall tricks the plant into producing more hormones, and that's one of the responses that we can get. So.
All right, Rock, your first one here is a Lincoln viewer who thinks they found yellow star thistle. We think not. What is it, and what should they do?
Well, I'm pretty confident it's not yellow star thistle, primarily because the little base of the seed head thing I don't know what that's called. Somebody the botanist in the room can tell me what that is. But it has spines on it, and this definitely doesn't. Plus, the leaf arrangement isn't really typical of star thistle. I can tell them that it's not star thistle, but I can't tell them what it is. It's definitely a thistle, and I wish I could be a little more clear on that. And this sample, as they mentioned, had been, they pulled it and threw it over on the side, and it was all desiccated. So they did what we would recommend, is just to get rid of it, but not going to be able to ID it. I apologize.
All right. Your next one here is, he's got Creeping Charlie. He wants to know what and when.
It's, the proper common name is ground ivy,
yes.
But it is a creeper, and it's vine night apparently, or ivy night. But fall applications of products containing triclopyr are probably your best bet, because this is what we consider one of the top 5 most difficult to control broadleaf weeds in the garden and yard.
All right. 2 pictures on this next one. This one started voluntarily near a brick fence. Likes the ferny look and the bright pink. It's Grand Island.
Yeah, this is Russian thistle, which is not what you want to be growing intentionally. It does have kind of a pretty ferny good look, and it's interesting because in the old westerns, they used to have tumbleweeds. This is what this will become when it dries out and rolls across and plants the Russian thistle everywhere. But the old westerns had it, but this didn't come into the United States until 1912 in a shipment of wheat from Russia. So bottom line is those westerns were all wrong.
Right. And your final one here is Fall City. Is this a weed or a flower in this planter?
That's definitely weed. This is annual ragweed, and I think they want to get rid of it right now.
Yes, before anybody with allergies.
Before anyone with any hint of an allergy, before it flowers out. So let's get that pulled out and destroyed.
All right. Kyle, 2 pictures on this. This is lilacs. Leaves turn brown and drop early and late August. Tried watering. What's the deal?
Cercospora leaf spot, very common in the past few years. It's not very well studied. Thinking about cercosporas on other ornamentals, there's potential that an early summer fungicide application would be effective. But by this time of year, the lilac leaves have really done their job for the most part, and so they can drop. Again, it's okay to have some shrubs, have trees that do have dropped leaves. Really nothing to do about it, though.
All right. 1 picture on this next one. This comes from Deer Trail, Colorado. I suspect you already have talked about this. This is what?
Well,
maybe?
I think that maybe there's a little bit of scab in here, but with when I zoomed in, every leaf is showing that tip necrosis. And so anytime it's every leaf that's showing something, typically that's going to be something abiotic or environmental. I think that it's probably just a little bit thirsty, especially under the rocks. The rocks can heat things up, dry the system out a little bit.
All right. 3 pictures on this next one. This comes to us from Glen Carbon, Illinois. Cankers on a hickory. So 3 pics on this, and then he saw I think it's a slug probably. But he wonders, is there anything he can do to save this tree?
Probably not. By the time we're seeing this much injury, the tree is probably not long for this world. There is something that's known as hickory decline, which again isn't very well studied, but there's a couple different types of fungi that are associated with a boring beetle, and I think that maybe that's what's going on here. So anything you can do to make the tree happy and healthy.
All right, and one more. This is brown on the milkweed. Is there anything she can do about it, or just let it be?
Just let it be. Could be one of our fungal leaf spots, or it could be environmental, but don't worry about it.
All right, John, 2 pictures here. This comes to us from Wayne. This is an amaryllis, and he discovered white roots, brown roots, but spots of red. Any big deal or just interesting?
I think that's actually just the normal root. So the white root is healthy root, and sometimes at the growing points we get different colors. So that looks just like normal growth to me.
Perfect. 1 picture here. This comes from Plattsmouth. What in the world with this corn?
So I think something interesting is happening here. So I think the question was, is this like a throwback to like original corn?
Right.
And corn originally was sort of like a wheat head. It was sort of encased in like husks. It was called teosinte. And I think this is some sort of genetic throwback to something like that. So you can see sort of like, it looks like sort of a wheat head up above. There's actually cobs of corn called husk corn that have husks on it, but it is a cob of corn. So I think it's just some sort of interesting genetic anomaly.
Excellent. This next one, why did this happen to all of her cabbages? This is Syracuse.
So, and I think when I read this question earlier, they said they were using soaker hose,
right,
which is good for watering, but also good for overwatering.
Right.
And I think there might be, and rot Kyle can help me along here, probably some sort of root rot or something like that going along that's coming up into the plant.
All right, and two more on this one. This comes to us from Pierce. 30 tomatoes. Some are good, some look like this. What's this?
So that is our old friend herbicide damage. So when we get the leaves that are actually growing in that curled manner, that gives us herbicide damage. I got through all those very fast because these guys take forever and I have no time at all to talk about things. I'm going to sit on that end next time.
All right. Well, anybody who gets into vegetable gardening will almost certainly have a few tomato plants. If you care for them, you shouldn't have too much problem getting them to harvest. But occasionally there are many problems that need our attention. Here's Scott Evans to help us figure out the trouble with tomatoes.
It's been a hot summer this year in Nebraska, and we're starting to feel the effects of the heat on our landscape and vegetable gardening. And one of the plants in particular that we're getting calls about is the tomato. Callers are asking us why their plants are not producing the yield that they should, or they're not producing at all. And this is coming across a wide range of cultivars, anything from our beefsteak tomatoes down to our cherry and grape tomatoes. And what we're seeing is the effects of the heat. When we have daytime temperatures above 90 degrees, this can make the pollen sterile. And when the pollen becomes sterile, the fruit production actually slows down or it can completely stop. There's not much we can do about the heat except for wait for some cooler weather, but we could consider try some of those new heat-tolerant cultivars such as Solar Flare, Sun Chaser, or even Florida 91. Another problem that we're starting to see on tomatoes is blossom end rot. This is when the bottom of the fruit becomes dark and sunken. It is not a disease, but it is a calcium transport issue. Calcium is difficult for the plant to move in dry soils, so one of the things that we can do is keep the soil evenly moist, consistent watering, and mulch the plants. This is going to help get the calcium from the soil to the fruit. Calcium is rarely missing in our soils here in Nebraska. Something else that we could take a look at with blossom end rot is what type of fertilizer are you using. High nitrogen fertilizers or fertilizers that are ammonium based can actually make blossom end rot worse. So for having some of those problems, make sure that you keep the soil evenly moist and maybe consider swapping out your fertilizer. And finally, we are starting to see a lot of our different diseases show up on our plants, ranging from early blight, anthracnose, bacterial speck, or bacterial spot. These are fairly common diseases. Besides good plant health care, we can make sure that our plants are mulched. That's going to help reduce splashing onto the leaves. When we do water, we want to make sure that we're watering the soil and not the plant so we can keep those leaves dry. Besides those practices, consider rotating your crops. And if you're still having issues, look at some of the new cultivars because they are resistant to some of these diseases. If you're going to decide to apply a fungicide, have that disease identified because bacterial diseases are not well managed with a fungicide. There's not much we can do about the heat. We still have plenty of growing season ahead of us, and hopefully that weather's going to cool off and our tomatoes are going to start producing for us, and eventually some of us are going to get those tomatoes for our BLTs.
With the way the weather has been, it's a wonder any of us have any tomatoes at all. Stay on top of it, and you may have a bumper crop. There's many more video features about tomatoes on our Backyard Farmer YouTube channel. So take a few minutes after the show, check out our past shows and those features. While you're there, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on all of our great content. Announcements of cool things in the gardening world: the Lincoln Iris Society Rhizome Sale, the 30th at St. Andrews in Lincoln. Our second announcement tonight is the Science and Ag Family Field Day at UNL Haskell Ag Lab on Wednesday, August 3rd. There will be some farmers there. And of course, East Campus Discovery Days. The next one is Saturday, August 13th on the East Campus Mall. All right, gentlemen, Kyle, good guy or bad guy? Rural Stromsburg.
They're fine. These are box elder bugs, so they invade, but they're not going to hurt anything.
All right, this is a Blair, Nebraska viewer. Single insect taken, so only one.
Yeah, this is a 10-year-old adult of some true bug, so it just emerged, and that's why it has. This isn't its true color, but that's why it's this reddish. Probably a box elder bug again.
Okay, this is a Grand Island. What is this insect? Thought he was taking a picture of a fungus and then it jumped.
Yeah, they are flatted plant hoppers. So this family, the nymphs, they produce these waxy secretions.
And spray of water?
Yeah, I should think so, yeah.
Okay, all right, and then we have one more. These are demolishing plants. Put 8 on them, but not sure it's the correct answer.
Yeah, well, permethrin should normally provide some control for blister beetles. You could try carbaryl if that hasn't worked. Otherwise, hand picking. They do kind of move in swarms, so it might be more came in after. But if you do hand pick, just make sure that you wear gloves because they can cause nasty blisters.
Excellent, thanks, Kyle. All right, Rock. 2 pictures here from North Platte. Weedy grass and the bluegrass. It's in a small area.
It's smooth brome, and glyphosate is really the only thing you can use, and then reseed. So I would start spraying it now, spray it once or twice, and then in early or late, September, put down some seed of the bluegrass that you have there, and you'll be good to go.
All right, 3 pictures on this next one. This has invaded landscape beds in a large parking lot in West Omaha. Roundup has not worked.
I'm surprised the Roundup hasn't worked. This is the genus is Rumex. I'm not sure which one because we don't have a seed head on it. So they could be annual and perennial, but the Roundup should have worked. So it may have been a timing issue. It may have been too hot. The rate may have been wrong, but glyphosate should work on that, and there's plenty of room around the plant to get it sprayed.
All right. This is an Elk Point, South Dakota viewer who sent in this.
This is common purslane. You can buy it as an ornamental, but why would you? Because it's kind of an invasive weed. Very difficult to control when it's that big. And if you tear it up into little pieces, then a bunch more grow back. So you want to catch it when it's young, and pre-emergent like preen will work fine.
All right. Kyle, 3 pictures, fungus on tomato leaves. What to do?
Yeah, so I think that this is Septoria leaf spot on the tomato leaves. Can't really see it on this picture, but this one here we have the spots that are kind of grayish. There should be maybe even some black specks inside of it. They had been using a product that had a bacillus biological control in it. Bacillus don't work that well against Septoria, and this here just looks like blossom end rot to me.
All right, and then you have a pepper plant showing what?
I think that this is a combination of sun scald, possibly some blossom end rot, and then saprophytic fungi that have moved in and kind of caused that black coloration.
All right, and then coneflower. What do we do about this?
It's aster yellows, prune at ground level.
All right, and we have very little time left, John, but...
It's the story of my life.
Yankton, what caused this one branch out of this dwarf Alberta spruce, and what do they do?
Well, the dwarf is kind of a mutation, so now it's trying to mutate back, so prune that out, otherwise you're going to have a giant tree growing out the side of that.
Perfect. Dead branches in butterfly bush, what to do?
I think just prune them out and monitor. That can happen for a lot of different reasons, so just keep an eye on it, prune them out.
All right, and one more. This is, we know this is mulberry, and the next one is aspen. What does she do to control these suckers?
So we have the mulberry and the aspen there, so you can prune those at ground level. Sometimes if they try to come back from the sucker, you might want to hit it with a little bit of glyphosate, just a paintbrush on there right onto the plant, and that should take care of it.
Awesome, great job, guys.